and culture track of Radically Rural. Woo! Yeah! Oh, so excited to be here again. I have had the pleasure of organizing the arts and culture track every single year that we've done Radically Rural, and we've brought some really amazing folks here. This year, I'm really excited that Molly and Catherine, two of our presenters, were with us virtually in the past. And this year they're able to be here in person. It just feels like such a wonderful community that we're building together, and these radically rural values that we're digging into are now celebrated in an embodied way in this space, and it's great. So I'm Jessica Gelter. I am the director of Arts Alive, and I'm also a performing artist. So I wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Putnam Foundation. They're an incredible supporter of so many different arts happenings and organizations across our region. They're a really vital part of what makes the arts thrive here. Also, of course, want to thank the Hannah Grimes Center, the Keene Sentinel, and our hosts here at the Historical Society of Cheshire County. They do incredible programming and exhibits that really transcend not just specifically here and now history, but they tell and share stories that are really transformational and really, I think, resonate with national culture as well. So, just a moment for logistics. The bathrooms, there is one set of bathrooms down the stairs and one set of bathrooms over here to the right and down the hallway. And in case of an emergency, the exit is just the way you came, and there is another exit if you go past the stairs and take a left. You can go out the front door. So again, it's wonderful to be able to host this event in person today, and I'd like you all just take a moment to look around the room. Hello, what a great group of people we have. Actually, can you make some eye contact, maybe give a little wave, hey, what's up? Now we're just gonna take 60 seconds and just go introduce yourself to somebody that's sitting within your circle, sitting near you, somebody you don't know.
So I run an art center.
Adding my lunch to my training.
I actually
Not too far. Oh, yeah, awesome. I'm sorry. This is Sam. Yeah, awesome. Hi, Jim. Nice to meet you.
So it's great to get you guys together to connect, which reminds me,
that's
if you come back to your seats now, you can connect later at the Connect event tonight. Tonight, don't forget to hop on a bus and head out to the farm, because we're going to have a big party at Stonewall Farm where you can connect, meet each other, have some yummy local food, and deepen these very superficial relationships that you get to make in 60 seconds. So, of course, that reminds me, communicating, cell phones, just keep them quiet during this event. We'd greatly appreciate that. So, here we are at the Historical Society. A lot of the work that happens here explores how individuals and community members have come to work and grow this community together. They're all from different backgrounds, different cultures, including the traditional folks who were here before it was colonized. This is the traditional homeland of the Abenaki people, and they're part of the Wabanaki Confederacy. And settlement here has such a long history. I recently found out that there is an archaeological site in town that dates back to 12,000 years ago. Times of the mammoths, people were passing through here. And so it's important to acknowledge that, a lot has happened on this land, and a lot of people have come through, and a lot of cultures have shaped who we are today in this moment. So what a privilege it is to gather today in this beautiful place with this deep history. There's something really special about rural communities. It's something in the pacing or the connection to nature or the way that we probably know too many details about each other's lives, way more than in a big city. And the arts, what we're talking about today, arts and culture, they give us a way to connect with each other and each other's deeper selves. Our histories, our inspirations and loves, our unique perspectives. Over the last couple decades, there was some research and some policy work done around how the arts can play a role in community development. You may have heard of Richard Florida and his theories around the creative class. There's been this big movement to market creative community assets and creatives and enhance communities through the arts. But it has come to be seen as somewhat problematic for the ways that it extracts these creative, fun, beautiful resources and energies from artists and culture bearers in our communities. And these same people don't necessarily always see the benefits of that economic growth and development. So we're looking at how arts can be systemically supported, how culture can be systemically supported. Because beyond economic development, the arts are really vital for how we connect with one another, like I said before. So when you're marketing your community as an artsy place, when you're promoting the culture, when you're bringing folks in around that, it can't be done without offering support on the other end to artists. Once you get your creative folks there, how can you support them? How can you engage them? Besides marketing to them, what do they need to thrive in your community? And how can you support the work so that they can enhance your community as well? We have 3 fantastic stories today, 3 fantastic programs that are engaging with artists, and we'll hear from them, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A and some discussion for us all to have. First, let me introduce all 3 of them, and then we'll kick off with Blair. Blair Benjamin. He's the founder and director of Assets for Artists at MassMocha. It's a program that provides professional development workshops, coaching, working capital grants, community building, artist residencies, and more. And it's served more than 3,000 individual artists and creatives. Blair's also a poet, I found out last night, and a writer himself. He's from North Adams, which has a population of about 10 to 12,000, and it is, like many of our rural communities, somewhat economically depressed. Molly Johnson is from Springboard for the Arts. She's the rural program manager there, and Springboard has this robust arts support programming, and they're located in Minnesota. They have one arm in the city and one arm in the rural communities around. And they're doing some really incredible work. You should check them out. So Molly is also a dancer and co-founder of Dance Barn, which brings dance into rural communities in Minnesota. And then our last presenter is Kyle Whalen. He's the director at La Luz Centro Cultural. It's a nonprofit in Hampton, Iowa, and they serve the Latina community in north central Iowa. So their mission is to promote cultural awareness and diversity with hospitality and support services for all. And they partnered with Arts Midwest on a program called We the Many, and Kyle will tell you all about that. But it's a fantastic program that Arts Midwest identified as something they needed to do to break down barriers to supporting BIPOC and immigrant cultural communities across the Midwest. So Kyle will speak about that. So without any further ado, come on up, Blair.
All right. All right. First, technology-wise, we gotta, I think, share screen so Kyle can see what's going on. All right, and I hope you can see that too, Kyle. So hi everybody, Blair Benjamin from Mass MoCA Assets for Artists. We're here to talk about artists, so I'm going to start with a question for you all. Who here identifies as an artist, a maker, creative things? Just about all of us, excellent, as I sort of guessed and hoped. And then let's see who has an artist who's a friend in the family. Does everybody know an artist and friends of an artist? Good. All right. Excellent. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit about Assets for Artists, a program at Mass MoCA. I'll also refer to it as AFRA. And it's an initiative of the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art, that's Mass MoCA, and it's located in the town of North Adams, Mass, a post-industrial town with a lot of former factory buildings, kind of like you see here. And as Molly said, it's small population, it's under 13,000 now. At its peak, it was about 26,000. So there's been a lot of population loss as jobs have left the area. And we're located in the, just to sort of situate you, in the far northwest corner of Massachusetts, in Berkshire County. And physically, so that's about 90 minutes from Keene, for those of you who aren't from this area. Surrounded by, beautiful mountains and fields and forests. And Mass MoCA is physically the largest contemporary arts center in America. It's about 650,000 square feet of former factory space. It opened to the public in 1999 on this 16-acre, 26-building campus. And just, I'm curious, who here has been to Mass MoCA? Do we have a few past visitors? Good, pretty amazing place. Fair enough to say. So I want to start with this image from the museum. So this is one of the first artworks I ever saw at Mass MoCA back in 2000 when I was interviewing for a job there. So it's by an artist named Yves-André Larmé with a poetically titled installation, Apparatus for the Distillation of Vague Intuitions. And the reason I start here is that Mass MoCA has a mission, which is unusual for a museum, which is not just showing art and exhibiting and educating the public about contemporary art and performance, but actually economic development is written right into the mission of the museum. And so we, in the terms of the museum, we think of that as Mass MoCA being kind of a laboratory, not just for art and the creation of new work, but also a laboratory for economic development, for community development, that's part of our purpose. And so I really connected with this piece of art because it sort of made this beautiful connection between art and science, a mashup of worlds that sort of appealed to me as both an artist, a poet, a fiction writer, but also kind of an administrator, somebody who does sort of that left-brained work of running numbers and coming up with program design, but always sort of trying to bring my artist perspective into it as well. And this piece is this sort of strange, beautiful work that thinks about intuition and guesswork, the things that we don't always imagine are part of science, but actually have a lot to do with it. So I always think of this as a bit of an inspiration for my work. And I was thinking of this kind of mashup of worlds when I started kind of tinkering in this metaphorical laboratory around artist development and artist support back in 2007 and 2008. So my job then was Director of Real Estate and Community Development at Mass MoCA. But I wasn't hired to create an artist support system at the museum. But like I said, Mass MoCA was a place where you could experiment, where you could try things out in this sort of laboratory. So I was interested in what would it look like to kind of experiment with support systems for artists. So the kind of mashup idea light bulb going off for me, broadly speaking, was that artists I felt were really kind of missing some of the financial and business tools that they needed to be more successful, especially if they were living in rural areas where they're not part of sort of large communities of other artists and the organizations that tend to support artists. And so for my previous work in community development, which is stuff I did before coming to Mass MoCA, I knew of tools and resources that were out there, but I knew that artists weren't really taking advantage of them, that they weren't finding small business technical assistance useful to them. So I thought there was an opportunity to try to connect these worlds And it wasn't rocket science kind of laboratory work, but it did require some experimentation, some adaptation, and I would say those are really important through lines for the work that Assets for Artists does. So to tell you a little bit more about our model, during those first 6 or 7 years that I was doing Assets for Artists work, I was really just sort of running it in my personal time as a side project under this sort of broader portfolio of work that I was doing for MassMocha. And I'm a big fan of kind of passion projects and people sort of getting really excited about something and just running with it, kind of not even, whether or not it's part of their job description. I encourage that in the people that I work with on my team now. And it was definitely something that was important to me to sort of have this idea and just see where it might take me and where it would go. And fortunately, MassMocha was a place that would support that kind of experimentation. The early work that we were doing was really kind of experimenting with different kinds of financial and business training that artists would take advantage of and trying to find the right ingredients for having artist-led training that would be more successful, allow artists to connect to this kind of support system better than they would in a lot of traditional entrepreneurship and business training. And I would say one of the things that we did early on was really develop a particular expertise around accessing sort of non-traditional forms of capital for artists to take advantage of. So we started using government funding match savings accounts, which I could say more about, but that has kind of evolved over the years into now giving a lot of small capacity building grants for artists. And so, we tend to give small amounts of money, $2,000 to $4,000, and we always pair that capital, which is totally unrestricted for the artists and how they use it, we pair that with coaching opportunities, with workshops, and with network building for artists to connect with each other. So we went from starting with just 9 artists in Berkshire County back in 2008, a very, very small pilot program. And then over those first 7 or so years, we gradually built it up and found a lot of interesting support for our work across multiple states. So we began working with state cultural councils, the USDA, Rural Business Development, Mass Rural Capital Corporation. And I would say that our innovation really in those early years was being able to kind of translate the jargon, the kinds of language that gets used around economic and business development into terms that artists could identify with, that they could connect to, so that they wouldn't, because artists can be very easily sort of alienated by a lot of the language that gets thrown around in business development and business planning. But we found that, in fact, artists have these kind of incredible strengths in many cases, which are, they're great at setting goals for themselves in the studio. They're great at sort of breaking those goals down into small steps and being able to execute on those. And they're able to get a lot done with very little, like they have this resourcefulness. So those tools are incredibly powerful, and we do a lot of kind of validating those strengths that artists have. And so, some of those strengths also include just this vision that artists have to be able to make something from nothing. We encourage artists to be able to harness that power, these core strengths, for not just their creative work, but also how they support themselves as sustainable lives and also sustainable communities. So being artists ourselves, the team that I've assembled here at SS for Artists, we try and tap into these same core strengths and build a program that will be creative, that will try to make something from nothing. Those strengths include sort of being brave enough to try new things and experiment, and sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. But you always learn from that and keep going forward. So I want to show you a video from one of our projects in North Adams called the North Adams Project. So we do a combination of statewide work across multiple states, but then we also do some really place-based community building work in various areas, and North Adams being the home base of MassMocha and Assets for Artists. That's where we've done a lot of our experimentation and really gone deep with creating communities of artists who connect to each other. So I'm going to show you this and then say a little more about.
We both had a dream for a while of potentially running an artist residency space.
We found out about the North Adams Project grant.
There's not many grants out there that pay artists to move to their city, to relocate to their city.
When we moved here, we knew absolutely no one. And now there's this community of friends and even supporters that's maybe small in numbers, but it's so strong in how much they care about North Adams and the arts and what they're doing.
It's inspiring watching other artists move here and feel that like they can create something here and believe in this town. I'm still looking at spaces to bring aerial silks to this area. I'm excited to bring something that doesn't exist here yet to people that's a form of art that can be like recreational.
Every single person who I've dealt with on the city level has been super excited to hear that we've moved here, to hear a little bit about what we're up to. That level of welcome is really appealing.
Yeah, North Adams welcomes a level of development that some other cities are pushing out.
I enjoy having nature close by. I like that city vibe next to nature.
That's the biggest character North Adams has, is its art culture.
It kind of has the best of both worlds. I think most people who live here feel that.
The gallery is called Outside. We focus on contemporary art and design.
Having the gallery sort of opened up North Adams in a totally different way for us and connected us to people and opportunities that I don't think we would have had otherwise.
When we showed up and already were working on the gallery, working on our design practice, and then there was this completely outside entity that said, we care about that and here's a program to offer you all kinds of support and advice. That was, to be honest, pretty mind-blowing.
Assets for Artists allowed me to believe in my artwork and believe that I really can create this business that seems like a dream. It could be my life.
All right, so the rationale of this project, specifically in North Adams, was that we've been doing this kind of individual support and development with artists over a long period of time, but we hadn't really focused on North Adams in particular, or any one community in real depth. And so what we had observed in North Adams was that a lot of artists had moved to the community in several waves, sort of before and after Masamoka opened. They tended to be older folks who were maybe of retirement age. They sort of had stopped teaching or stopped other careers, and now they could become artists, or they were already artists, but they could devote themselves fully to their artwork, and they could move to affordable space in Masamoka relative to places they were coming from. And that was a nice sort of injection of activity in the community, especially a place that's losing a lot of population over decades and decades. But we were finding that it was really a challenging place for younger artists to get connected, to support themselves, that they didn't have the resources that sort of earlier transplants had had. And similarly for folks who were coming out of school, who were maybe growing up in the area, also felt it was a really hard place to stay if you were trying to pursue an artist career. So we really focused on trying to attract a set of artists with some support, small grants, a lot of coaching, hand-holding, orienting to the community, sort of giving that welcome that makes them feel North Adams has got their back and is looking out for them. We actually reached the point with that project that it was successful enough. We actually realized as the community was improving and as many folks were coming in as we saw, that we were actually on the verge of some gentrification issues, and we sort of pulled back from the major support for folks coming into the community, and then really started focusing on those who were already here, who had been here a long time, or had come fairly recently. And then, so I would say the more recent evolution of our program in the last few years has been going from this individual support for artists to more sort of artist community building support. And so in North Adams, this sort of kicked off with being the place where we started working more closely with a larger set of artist advisors to design the work and identify the needs that artists had. We did this artist town hall that had 115 artists in a relatively small community come together and work with us and a team of our advisors around what they needed, what they wanted, what they their hopes and dreams were for an artist community in North Adams. And that led to a whole variety of projects. We started sending out an artist resource newsletter that we paid an artist to put together and goes out to 600 people. We started paying artists to organize quarterly meetup events where artists could really socialize and get to know each other. We've got this artist vending machine project where, again, we paid an artist. We sort of invested in an artist project to create a vending machine for local artworks to be sold. It's located on the Masamoka campus where a lot of visitors can come through and see it. Again, it's a total artist project maintained by that artist now. We put together, events for artists to swap materials and connect in sort of finding ways to trade and barter and support each other more cost effectively. And we still give out capacity building grants and do workshops and coaching. But we think of this grant program and the investments we make in artists, not so much as supporting artist projects, but really investing kind of in the human capital and the human connection between artists. So we like to think of the artist as that sort of full, complicated person, not just the work that they make, but all the needs that they have, all the abundant talents and assets they have to give, and think about how we can focus on collaboration over competition, which is difficult in the art world because so many forces are sort of pointing people towards scarcity and competition, and really get folks to try to think about long-term sustainability, long-term investment in the community that they've chosen to make their home. So we're proud of the numbers that we've got in terms of giving out money, putting money in the hands of artists. The number, we've served over 3,000 artists now across all of the variety of programming that we do, from the Berkshires across Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and tons of workshops. But we're always still experimenting and sort of exploring what's the next set of needs that we see coming. For us, we think that has to do with affordable housing for artists and affordable space in general. I mean, we see sort of signs of gentrification even in rural Western Mass, and we see tremendous real estate appreciation in the eastern parts of the state and other regions that we serve. So that is a really key issue for us to work on, how we can bring more resources to artists around the affordability of space that is so essential to their livelihood as it is for so many folks. And then we're also thinking a lot about and starting to put money and resources towards cultural organizing as a specific sort of set of artist activity that we feel is sort of important to the next wave of our work around systems change. So not just the individual change and community building, but also sort of paying more attention to the systemic issues that artists face and that all of our communities face. So we think artists have an important role to play that as cultural organizers and bringing their talent, their creative talents and their sort of planning and visioning talents to community change through organizing work. So that's what we hope to see coming, and we're working on next for Assets for Artists, among all the other things that we continue. So I encourage you to check out assetsforartists.org, which is where all of our info is stored, and look forward to talking more about this today.
So we'll pause for questions and to dig deeper into some of these stories at the end, after everyone else has presented. The next person I actually want to pull up is Kyle, coming to us virtually. It's pretty awesome. Kyle, say something so we know the audio is working again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful.
All right. Let me make sure I grab the right slide. Well, I'm not gonna lie. I have done a few presentations, but for some reason I'm nervous to do this virtually. So mostly because you know how technology is. Everything seems to go awesome until it doesn't. So I'm Kyle Whalen. I am the director of La Luz Centro Cultural. I have been director for about a year and a half now. We were contacted by Arts Midwest, and our main contact was Cristal. And at that time, she emailed me and our former director, and she said, "Hey, do you want to get several thousands of dollars. And at that time, we were transitioning, and all I could sit there and think was, is this a project I want to take on right now? We decided to do it, and from there, we tried to figure out what we were going to do with all this money. It was something that, honestly, at the time, La Luz was not focused on, was really the arts. We've always been focused on culture and making sure that everything is culturally specific, but we just weren't focused necessarily specifically on the arts. And so you can get an understanding of a little bit about who we are and what we do. La Luz Centro Cultural is located in Hampton, Iowa. We have about 4,300 people in Hampton, and then we have a few smaller rural, even more rural than we are, communities that are right within 10 miles of us. And so we support the Latino population within this radius, and even a little bit further within, even into the cities that are 45 to 50 minutes away from us. We have a population of about 23% Hispanic or Latino, and that's pretty big population within this area. And we try to service them in several different ways. At the time that we received this grant, our biggest focus was on victims of a crime and then our immigration. And so when we got this grant, I just sat there and I thought, man, how do I bring art back into this culture? And the awesome thing is that prior to COVID, we were doing things that were a little more artistic. You'll see right here, this is some pictures of our Gran Festival, and that's honestly our biggest event. And that's been something that we've been doing now for about 7 years. And we have brought in local artists. We've brought in artists from outside of the community just to showcase who Latinos are and how we as a community want to help them understand our culture. And when I say our, I'm actually not Latino, but I married into it. And so I've adopted the culture quite a bit. So to kind of start off with all of our Arts Midwest, We the Many funding, we decided to make our Dia de los Muertos, which is something specific to the Latino culture, and kind of take it a little bit bigger. We started doing Dia de los Muertos a little bit prior to COVID, and then had our altar, as you see down in the right-hand corner, or at least my right-hand corner, hopefully yours as well. And this time we decided that we just wanted to go really big. And we brought in our kids and we decorated the place. We had our altar. We had several different activities for our little ones, and we had some music and just watched the kids play and have some fun. We had awesome activities with just simple things, being able to learn a little bit about our culture and how important it was. And like I said, just for me, when it comes to culture, watching our kids really get excited about it and watching them do things that they probably would have done back in their home country, but isn't as available maybe in the United States, watching them embrace that. My children are Latino. As I said, I'm married to somebody from Mexico. And So being able to watch them as well, because they haven't been able to go to Mexico yet either. And so just having them embrace that as well. And we had a local artist doing some photography for us. And that was, I didn't showcase a lot of her pictures yet, but she did some amazing work with what she had and being able to just go around and capture the event. Then I was able to get together with Leon Keener, who is from the Franklin County Arts Council, which we're in Franklin County here. And he is one that he loves to do arts. He was a band director. He was, I believe he taught choir. He just loves the arts. And being able to pull him in and use all of his resources, we were able to add on to something that he was already doing, in that he did like a scholarship event. And when we reached out to him, he decided that, you know what, why don't we bring in a Latino artist and have them be a part of our event that we normally do. And so as you see here, Mario, he is originally from El Salvador and came up to the United States and is living in Florida. And we contracted him, and he's an opera singer, believe it or not. Most people, when they hear of Latino things going on, they think of mariachi and reggaeton and different things like that, but he's an amazing, amazing opera singer. We brought him in, and Calle Sur, which Edgar, I believe he's from Venezuela, and then Karin is from Colombia. And they were able to basically meet each other virtually, show up to the event, and within that day, they had themselves our local choirs all set up to put on a concert. And it was one of the most amazing things that I think I've seen in a while. Being able to have our local choir here in Hampton, and then another choir that is right next door, being able to have them sing alongside of him, being able to have Karin and Edgar as well. It was an amazing event. As you see right here, you'll see Mario, and you'll actually see to our far left that this is one of our choir students, and they're actually doing like a duet. And then they have the choir in the back helping him out. And I didn't know that that was happening. I honestly wasn't much of a part of the whole behind the scenes for this. And just to be able to know that he was able to do that, that was something that excited me, to be able to know that we had one of our local kids participate in that. Later on in the year, they actually did the exact same song, and they featured just this young man at our concert, and without Mario, of course. And it was just as amazing as the first time. So in this next slide, you'll see, like I said, the choir, Mario, Jody, who was our pianist, and then Karin and Edgar. In the picture to the right, you'll see Mario again and Karin, and then there's Leon, really the mastermind of all of it. If I didn't have him, I don't know if I would have been able to put anything together anywhere close to what he did. And so knowing that you can have people that are experienced, bringing them in and having them help you with their experience, with their connections, and everything like that, he was able to look beyond what he normally did and just sit there and say, let's do this, Kyle, let's make it big. And let's bring in people that we wouldn't normally bring into these types of events. And like I said, it just turned out amazing. Now, you'll see here that we had at one time a dance group. And we did that probably up until COVID. I tried to bring it back. I brought in somebody from Minnesota, and he did some instruction on one day. And I thought, well, maybe this is a start. When we did the instruction, we honestly didn't get very many people. And whether or not it was because of advertisement or whatever it was, just various people. I sent out a couple board members, one of them that had already participated in a dance group prior, and she went out to all the different participants prior, and nobody wanted to do it. And for me, that was just kind of an eye-opener that as much as I'm passionate about things and as much as I want to have culture in the community, that doesn't mean that everybody else is. And so I had to accept that. Here's another set of pictures from Gran Festival, which, like I said, we've been doing it for 7 years. This last year in 2023, we featured 2 of our local artists, and then we featured a local DJ as well. We were able to bring it all together between the staff and I. And as I said, we've tried to put these things together, trying to bring in some local representation, making sure that they understand that, hey, we want to make sure that you're identified in the culture. And I put a committee together the first year I organized this, and it wasn't successful in the sense that our committee wanted to participate. I tried to put a committee together again, and it just wasn't as successful either. And it ended up falling on the staff and people like that, which we're versed in culture, but we wanted to bring in more voices. And for some reason or another, it didn't always pan out. But it was a great event either way. We had, once again, that dance group that instructed us from Minnesota. They came in and they put on an amazing show. You'll see that in the left-hand photo. You see our community dancing, and then you see one of the artists from Minnesota as well, and they were able to do an amazing job. Now, these are more photos from past Gran Festival. This is one, once again, that Leon, we had talked about when we first got the Arts Midwest. I got with Leon and a couple of other people that were in the Franklin County Arts Council, and we started talking to them. What do we want to do in the community? How big do we want to get? How can we keep it sustainable? Because we don't want it to just be a one and done type of thing. And we decided to have a mural. Now, we already have a decent sized mural within the community, but we wanted this to reflect culture and the identity that there are Latinos in the area and how important it is for us to be together. And here we have the beginnings of it. Now, even before this, we tried to get some teachers and some students. You'll see in that left-hand corner some of our students. We tried to get some teachers and some students to start making the design, to get with the muralist and talk about how to do this. And it was fairly successful, honestly. We had 4 or 5 different students that threw in their different ideas, approved the design and everything like that. And then it came time to painting it. You'll see Marissa and her sister starting to sketch it out. And then we have our students there. They did basically a color by number. and had those students coloring it in each of those boxes. And it was awesome. Now, the one in the green shirt, that's my daughter. And then this is my niece. And they were sitting there having the time of their life for like 2 or 3 days while they just sat there with the muralists. And we had probably about 2 or 3 different other students that came in and did the exact same thing. Being able to see them realize something that they started with was an awesome opportunity for me. And I believe it was for the students as well. Just being able to go downtown and have a few of our students sit there and say, hey, we did that, was something that I wanted to be able to help our students say, look, we can do these big time things as well. And it really turned out amazing. Marissa and her sister did an amazing job. And like I said, that's downtown, right across the street from one of our local Mexican shops. So there are people seeing it all the time. So that's really what we've been able to do with Arts Midwest and We the Many grant. So far, we have a lot of other things that we want to be able to do. And as you have questions and answers, please feel free to ask anything about that or anything else. Here's our QR codes for both of our websites if you're interested, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. It's really exciting to be able to see these different stories of how, what do we consider an artist? What is culture? How do we support it? How do we highlight it and bring it in? And what does it do for our communities? So Molly is up next, and let me move things so you can all right, go ahead. Let's see here. Hey, Kyle. Up close and personal view of me here. Hey, everybody. I'm just going to pull this stuff up. All right. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Molly. I am here as part of Springboard for the Arts. Let's see. There I am in the bed of the truck with a bunch of feisty-looking ladies. I am the Rural Program Manager at Springboard for the Arts. Everybody that works at Springboard for the Arts is also an artist. We believe that artists should be the one making decisions for artists. That's why we're all artists that work there. So here in this photo, I was in the midst of making a dance film that took place on a gravel road, filmed over 3 days. We had to beg a guy to not mow his lawn so it didn't create some discrepancies in the shots. My mom is driving the truck that was my Grandpa Jerry's, whose family immigrated to this community from Norway. It was a great experience. So the little heart there is where I live. I live in Battle Lake, Minnesota. I'm about 3 hours-ish from the Twin Cities. It took 3.5 when I hit rush hour on my way to the airport. I work for Springboard for the Arts. Springboard, I love the arms. We have 2 arms. One arm is in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is our capital, and the office has been in St. Paul for just a little bit over 30 years. Our Fergus Falls office, I believe this is the 12th year. I don't know, I'm looking at you, you should know. We are right downtown Fergus Falls. Fergus Falls is about, I love that everyone's saying the populations of their communities, it's about 15,000. Battle Lake, where I live, is only 800 people though, so if that matters to you. So Springboard, our mission is to support artists with the tools to make a living and a life. Really, you can put the period there. But it's also important to build just and equitable communities full of meaning, joy, and connection.
we had the wonderful artist Heather C. Liu put this mission into art form. So in the center, yes, I know, right? And I have a few stickers. You can fight over them at the end. Or I could somehow get them to you. So in the center, we have Artists Are Essential, which we really see that in our communities and our spaces. Artists are who are making places somewhere we want to be, somewhere we want to live and thrive and create community. We also believe with artists being essential that can help to create vibrant and just local economies. And with those things, we are doing our best to create human-centered systems. So I could geek out about just our mission for my time to speak, but I've chosen to use my time to really zoom in on just one thing that Springboard does. There's lots of things, and this is what I just said to somebody earlier, that this is what I'm most excited to talk to anybody about, to my mailman, to like my grandma, to everybody. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. Oops, the Rural Regenerator Fellowship. And luckily, it's my voice on the voiceover here, so I'm going to count that as me speaking. Rural places need the creativity and leadership of artists to help build relationships, repair harm and division, and dream big about a future that works better for everyone. For more than a decade, Springboard for the Arts has supported the essential work of artists in developing human-centered, vibrant, and equitable local economies. In 2021, Springboard for the Arts launched the Rural Regenerator Fellowship to complement and build upon Springboard's robust ecosystem of programs and trainings for artists. Rural Regenerator Fellows participate in 2 years of peer learning and exchange, including 2 in-person retreats, one-on-one coaching and technical assistance, and an unrestricted $10,000 stipend. In the second year, they also receive support to visit and collaborate with one another.
This fellowship provides support financially and then also through deep connection and collaboration with other artists. That can be really an important thing when working in a rural place, to have those sorts of opportunities.
It's really helpful to hear the stories of other people who are experiencing the same things that you are. Hearing the successes and lessons learned from other regenerators it's a very inspirational thing.
There aren't that many places that sort of validate that kind of work. And in my own community, it kind of gave me a little bit of status. Strange thing, because I got so used to not having any, and that has been actually kind of lovely and weird.
I love this organization for reinstilling that, yes, you are beautiful, and telling us all that, whether we choose to believe it or not, and that our art is meaningful, and that we could, quote unquote, regenerate, right, and revitalize our rural areas with ourselves.
To learn more or apply to the Rural Regenerator Fellowship, you don't need to hear that last little bit. I apologize, the subtitles weren't on there. This is on Springboard's website as well if you wanted to check that out again. So the Rural Regenerator Fellowship started in the fall of 2021. It was initially the conversations as staff was a celebration of 10 years in our rural office. So we started dreaming big. We were like, okay, if all of these things we have learned having an office here and connecting with artists in our community, what do they need? What do we need? What do we want? And what we came up with was this fellowship. That is, so far we are in our 3rd cohort. It's a 2-year fellowship. It's really the goals are to foster relationships between rural exchange and relationship building, and then also really giving time and resources for personal reflection and growth, capacity building, both financially, relationship-wise, and growth as a artist or a business person or a and. Let's see here. I couldn't not put these lovely faces in the room with me today. These are our first 2 cohorts. So the first cohort, they actually just wrapped up last week. I definitely cried in that Zoom meeting because it was just really felt like putting a lovely bow on something that we weren't sure was going to work or be successful or if anyone would want to do it. So in this group of people, there's poets, there's people that own buildings that they're renovating, there's a playwright, there's a basket weaver, a folk opera writer, Chinese ink painter, incredible, wonderful people that are all living in rural communities and are making their places thrive and making people want to be there and stay there. This is our 3rd cohort, which we actually just announced a couple of weeks ago. I'm very excited to meet all of them. I can't geek out about them yet because I don't really know them yet. But keep an eye out. They are going to be doing great things. The region that the Rural Regenerator Fellowship is reaching at this moment in time is the upper Midwest, whatever that means. You can read the states here, as well as the native nations that are within this geography. I'm not going to go through all of these. You can read this on the website if you're super interested. But the cliff notes, the highlights are the $10,000 stipend, which is completely unrestricted, and we actually spend a lot of time in our first couple of retreats with the fellows talking about how that can be of service to them in lots of different ways. And we don't ask for any reporting on it, but anecdotally, I know that somebody was able to pay off part of their mortgage on their home. Somebody was able to start a project that they weren't able to purchase the supplies for. Someone was able to buy a car. They'd never had a car. Someone had another baby because they finally felt like they felt a little bit more steady to do it. So it looks like a lot of things for lots of different people. And then the part that I'm going to talk about a little bit more that has been kind of the thing that was like, oh, it would be nice if they could go visit each other. Let's just throw that in. Within the second year, after seeing the first cohort kind of start to experiment with this idea of like, here's some money, go visit each other, and if you want to do something, you can, or you can just like go out for dinner or whatever. And that has been wild. I mean, the things that have come out of this, if you give these people who are so devoted and dedicated to their craft and their way of creating community, I could go on and on and on. Here's 3 photos that'll tell you tiny stories. This is Annie and Bethany. Annie wrote a play about navigating the world as a disabled child, and it's all told about bugs. And it's like little critters that are telling this beautiful story about a grandmother and a little girl who had just been in a car accident. Bethany runs a theater in southern Minnesota and somehow created this whole play of puppets telling this beautiful story that Annie had written. Again, the fellowship doesn't require any type of project. They were just like, we're gonna do this. Up at the top here is Talon Bazile, who's an amazing rapper, and then Elisha, who you heard speak for a moment. They're doing a podcast interview. Nancy and Elisha also got together. I don't know what they did even. So this idea of exchange and getting people together, what we're doing now, these tiny little sparks that happen really can like turn into a crazy explosion. Which brings me to sort of another like, okay, these people want to keep getting together. Also, these people that we've met have people. And those people are so cool. And so we said, okay, let's get everybody together. So we told all of the fellows, you can invite 4 people to this thing. And we found the money. That's not part of my job, which I'm very happy about. We found the money to get them all there, to not have to pay for their travel, not have to pay for their lodging. We got them there. We had the fellows figure out what we wanted to talk about. Then we did all the annoying stuff. And then we got them together and we did this amazing hangout called the Rural Futures Summit. Oops, oh no. Molly. Okay, sorry, try that again. There's no words in this one, so. So it ended up being about 100 people. We brought them all to where Fergus's rural office is in Fergus Falls. We had an opening panel with some of the fellows talking about place. And then a series of conversations, roundtables that happened over just 2 days. Oh, and this mural was wild. I am not a visual artist, but it just was created within about an hour and a half, and now it's on the side of our building at Springboard too. So. That was the folk opera. That's Talon. You should definitely look up on Spotify. Let's see here. So here's my really beautiful drawing that I made this morning, wrapping this all together. So really what we're talking about here is fostering connection, and specifically in rural places. So my example of this is, we dreamed up this crazy thing, the Rural Regenerator Fellowship. We started seeing these wonderful connections that they were making on their own, and recognizing that there was still space for more conversation and more connection. And that's how the Rural Futures Summit was born. The end. I also brought cards too if you want to keep connected with me.
Thank you so much, Molly, Kyle, and Blair. So now we're going to open it up to questions. I've got the first one, then you guys can go. So hi, Kyle, can you see everybody? Excellent. Okay. So the first question I want to ask all three of you is right here. Oh yeah, why? Why do we do this work to support artists and culture bearers, and what does it make possible in your communities?
Is this one on? Yeah. Well, I can start, and I mean, the reason I do the work is as an artist, as a writer who finds it really hard to be a writer and to try to fit that into a life that often isn't easy for people to get by. I feel like we need support systems for artists. Like it's really hard to do this work, but it's so important to our communities. It's like the highest in human endeavor is sort of creating the sort of artworks and the traditions that build meaning in our lives. So to do that in isolation, or to do that within a community that doesn't feel like it's supporting that is horrible. And so being able to be an advocate for artists, to support artists, to help artists support each other, because that's really where the biggest impact comes from, is just artists feeling like they've got support from their colleagues, from each other. Just feels like really important, valuable work to build our communities. And so I want people doing that to me, and I want to do that back to others.
Can you say the last part of the question?
What does it make possible in your communities? Yeah.
Kyle, if you want to go, that's okay.
So the reason why I continue to do it is just my passion towards culture. I love culture in general. When we first met, I discussed how I hate labels. I hate the whole you're white, you're brown, you're whatever. I want to know who a person is behind that label. So for me, that's the biggest thing is getting to know people, who they actually are, and that's important, because without that culture, who knows who anybody really is. And so I push that a lot, whether it's on my kids, whether it's on my future students, because I'm hoping to be a teacher someday. That's what I push, is just making sure you know who you are, and that comes through culture.
So the second part was what is possible. And I just think that the possibilities are endless, but there is an end if we aren't including art and creativity in our future. And I think that's what keeps me going. I have 2 little kids that pretty much every aspect of their life is through some sort of creativity or art. And when those parts are missing, the joy kind of goes away, the anger comes up. And it's just so obvious with kids especially. I think as adults we learn how to to manage our feelings or whatever. But I really do think that if we minus the art part of the equation, like, we're screwed. So that's what keeps me going, you know, not in a fear or icky way, but in a joyful way, that I know problems can be solved through creativity, and a lot of time art goes with creativity. So that's what keeps me going.
Wonderful answers, wonderful. All right, y'all out there, it's your turn. Yes, Nina will bring you a microphone so everyone can hear.
Hi, I just want to make a comment. I don't know if you remember me in a virtual meeting during COVID, but we were able to use some of our the ideas that you shared with us to apply for a grant, and we also were beyond grateful that we received this amazing grant to support 10 artists that were able to do very similar to what you did. And same kind of response, the times that they got together and all of the creativity that came as, developed as a result of that, and the interconnections and other things that they weren't even thinking about that also happened. So indeed, it's a validation that when we involve artists, amazing things can happen. And just thank you for inspiring us, and also, it's an idea that my staff and I talked about forever. Also try to educate our funders on how different rural is from city, and I think you helped to codify that with the program that you are doing, and that provided the green light, and I think made it easier, because in their head they could see it better, and so the funding became a reality. So thank you so much.
Could you share what organization you're with?
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah.
What organization are you with again?
What's your name?
I'm Jackie Swabian from the Arts Council for Wyoming County. I was told that my face was plastered over some screen this morning.
Thank you. Well, that made my day, so thank you. I'm very excited to go back and let my team know. And those of you that are in in parts of organizations, it is really sticky. It's really, we're relying on private and public funding that has lots of guidelines, I will call them nicely. So if you're feeling stuck or feeling icky or whatever, I would happily connect with you. We are very open with our materials, our planning materials, the way we kind of put these together. So very happy to share anything if you're in a stuck spot or need inspiration.
Springboard seems to have a workbook for like every amazing idea. Like it's such a resource what you all do.
And they're free.
And the transparency of it. Yeah.
Catherine?
Yeah, the resources is something I was wanting to mention because I, sitting here was thinking, wait a minute, I've participated in programs for both Assets for Artists and Springboard for the Arts. I live in New Hampshire. I'm not in your home states. I use the Artists Working in Community workbook all the time. I was able to attend the nuts and bolts of being a performing artist workshop during, supported by NEPA, during the early days of COVID, and it's just got me thinking about the idea of rural communities often thinking or feeling as separate entities, but what does it mean to collaborate or support rural communities that are not your neighbour, they're across multiple states or across many thousands of miles. And I'm wondering, as you think about who your audiences are, all three organisations, how much are you thinking about, and obviously you some are, like what is replicable or what can move from one community to another and be an asset in another community, but doesn't necessarily become yet another program that you yourself run. Just if you have thoughts about that, about how we can bring these wonderful things to the state of New Hampshire, because the New Hampshire State Council for the Arts is not listed as one of your partners, and I've asked them about that before. So how can we bring more of that so that we're not having to start everything afresh, say here in the state of New Hampshire or wherever else we are. That was a bit rambling, but yeah, hopefully that made sense.
I'll just say I'm really inspired by the Regenerator Fellowship model in the way that it connects like rural artists across communities. Because one of the things that we found early in our work, when we just started in the Berkshires, is part of the sustainability model for us was not just focusing on one small community, because we didn't have the resources in North Adams and in the Berkshires just financially to sustain much of a program at that level there. We needed to sort of cover a larger geographic area to be able to start to tap into some of the resources that would allow us to do the programming that we wanted to do. But that results in a lot of variation between, like, we can do something really deep in North Adams, like I was describing. In other places, it's a much lighter touch, and it often depends a lot on the partnerships that we can form with local organizations that are really connected to artists on the ground and can give us the entree, that can provide resources, that can do more of that connecting work that's harder to do across a large geographic area. But I love the way that in Regenerative Fellowship, the artists are doing those creating those connections between the communities with each other, and that's a really lovely way to do it, I think.
Yeah, too close to. So as far as resources go, and just things I can offer, you mentioned the Artists Working in Community Handbook, it's like a workbook that you can go through. It's free on our website to download as a PDF, which I just learned that our tech smart people are turning it into a fillable PDF that it wasn't before, so that's exciting. We also have a handbook that is called The Work of Art, which is a 12-chapter book that takes you through anything from how to get funding to how to write an artist statement, all the things. There's also which is now, it's always running virtually now. It's a workshop series that follows the book, and we have artists that teach those workshops and facilitate those. Again, you can find those on our website. There's also trainings that go with those. So we train people to be able to facilitate and teach these workshops, and then the materials are yours to do whatever you want with them. You can use the exact same Springboard materials, and market it, and you don't need to ever tell us what you do ever again. There's abundance there. We don't need to own all of that. So if it's something where you're like, we just need the actual training and the people energy in my community, those are some resources. You said something else that I can't remember. Oh, and you already kind of mentioned this, but as far as the expansion of programs like this, there's 3 of us that work in our rural office. So, I'd say capacity is what we run up to the most of the time. And also the idea of satelliting into places that we don't know. I'd say Springboard is really good at hiring people in those communities to do the work. And I think that has been something that we are also learning with this fellowship that has really expanded our region. I would say before the Rural Regenerator Fellowship, we've always done national work, but not this type of deep national work or Upper Midwest. It's really been Minnesota, North and South Dakota that's been sort of our region for the rural work, at least. And just over this last few years, just seeing it happen naturally of we have people that we now know in Iowa or we now know in Michigan that we have this deep relationship with that now our network has opened. And that's the work on as an organization. Now I'm rambling.
Hey Kyle, did you hear the question? So the question was about how do you replicate your programs, or is there a way that you could partner with other communities to share your process in doing what you do to support the cultural programming that you do? So I think that's probably maybe a different sort of answer from you than we've heard from Springboard for the Arts and Assets for Artists.
Right. So for us, we've actually been trying to figure that out because we've had several of our rural communities surrounding us sitting there saying, hey, we want what you have. We have a lot of immigrants coming into our community and we don't know how to serve them. We don't have the immigration. We don't have the cultural events. And so we've been seeing a lot more of our rural communities trying to accept immigrants into their community and make them a part of it. This year alone, there was probably, I know of at least one community that started doing a festival just like ours in September, and then there was another one that has been trying to do it for 2 or 3 years. That was trying to get some input from us and getting some advice. And then there has been the state as well that's reached out to us a couple times just to see how we can work together. Because even within Des Moines, which is a big city, they don't have anything like what we have, and so we to collaborate with people, to partner with people and making sure that culture is out there, especially with us, with our Latino culture, making sure that that's out there as well. We just are open to helping wherever we can and listening and giving what knowledge we can and where we can.
And when you give that knowledge and when you have those conversations, Kyle, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 things you make sure you share with them? This is my top 3 bits of advice.
Right. So the biggest thing is just don't focus on those labels when it comes to culture, because when it comes to Hispanic culture in itself, you have people from Honduras, you have people from El Salvador, you have people from Mexico. I grew up most of my life around Hispanic population. I didn't pay attention to that until I married somebody from Mexico. And then I started getting to know people from different areas, and I realized, hey, this person doesn't have the same values, the same culture, the same background as my wife does. I'm curious. And as a Native American, we as well, we have that label of you're American Indian, but nobody knows the different nations. I'm Lakota, and I know that Lakota is different from Navajo. We have different languages. We have different cultural things that we do. So that's the first thing. Don't focus so much on the labels, because even as somebody that has white background, I'm French, I'm Irish. What does that mean? What does white mean? What does Latino mean? Hispanic mean? Let's get past that and find ways to pinpoint that. The other one is just ask. Culture is different, like I said. Just ask. What do you do? What language do you speak? What is your ancestry? That's what people have asked me on many occasions, and sometimes the last thing I would say is there really isn't a stupid question, even though somebody might sit there and look at you and you're like, are you kidding me? Because I've been asked, do you need a passport to get on a reservation? You don't. Do we have different IDs? Yeah, we do. Are there certain things within different reservations that they do? Recently, I was listening to something where you go on the Dene reservation over there, and they've got a sign specifically saying you can't take pictures unless you get permission. So really, just ask, and there really aren't that stupid questions. Don't be afraid to ask whatever you need to ask.
Great bits of advice. Good segment. All right, we're gonna take, let's see what time is it? Oh, we're gonna take one or two more questions in the front here.
I have like two questions and they might be connected to each other. So I'm a theater artist and I'm curious about specific resources for artists whose work is fundamentally collaborative, because I think I ran into a lot of resources that are for individual artists and how do you make a living as an individual artist. But to make a theater project that supports, then you're trying to support 12 living artists at once, and it's really expensive. And I'm sure maybe the answer is look at your website, but I'm curious about if you have any specific resources or ways you're thinking, you think of working with fundamentally collaborative artists. And then, no worries. And then the other part is around this sort of idea of cultural organizing, which I think is really interesting. And what do you feel in sort of the vantage points you're in is rising to the surface in that world as things that we can sort of band together as artists and advocate for and kind of use our collective power?
I'll just cultural organizing, and I'll maybe pass on performing arts. So I want to say the concept of cultural organizing is obviously not new. People have been doing it a long time. It's a bit new to us as a practice, as a program to try to be supporting. So we're very much in a learning mode and talking to a lot of artists who have been doing this work and do this work and are interested in doing it. It can take a lot of different forms is one thing we've learned very quickly, that some people might think of it as organizing for legislative change and advocacy, and that's super important, and that's a whole giant world of strategies and challenges that I think there's a need for artists to understand and connect to, those who are interested in that. And we have a lot of interest in folks we talk to around how do we get more artists actually in elected office, and what are the tools that could support that, and we don't have any great answers for that at this point, but it's something we're very interested in exploring. But then there's just a whole broad realm of cultural organizing, which is how do you connect to folks around issues in a community like the affordability of housing or like climate change, where there's a creative spark that an artist has that can move people to participate, to engage, to learn, and to then seek some change in the community. And so, our very early steps around cultural organizing our sort of initial instinct is that it's, for us, it's largely about building relationships between folks who are doing this work and often feel kind of isolated because it's not like they know exactly where to turn for help or to find other artists who are doing that work. And sort of like the Rural Regenerator Fellowship, we want to create opportunities for folks in various communities to connect with each other around cultural organizing, to feel like there's kind of peer exchange, peer support, and validation for this work and learning together.
Just a tiny little tag on yours, and then I'll go to the performing arts part. But I think that last part you just said is something that people in rural communities are really good at, is the connecting part. And anyways, that's all I wanted to say about that. The performing arts part, putting on a little bit different hat, Jessica had mentioned in the beginning that I also run a nonprofit organization called Dance Barn, which is a duo. My bestie, Ayumi Schaefer, she and I wanted to start this dance festival thing. And again, it was really hard. We're like, why won't anybody give us any money? Because we couldn't figure out who should apply for it. And it's supporting all this weird geography that not everyone's coming from the same place, and it was complicated, and we wanted to pay people, and it was annoying. And we ended up deciding to become a nonprofit because it was all coming into one spot. That's one option. I think there's other creative ways to go about funding. Where do you live?
I'm in Western Mass.
Okay, yeah, I don't know a ton about your funding structures either, but you might.
Yeah, we can talk offline maybe and explore things. Yeah.
Wonderful, and I think we have one more question and then we're gonna wrap it up. So.
All right, I'll keep it brief and I'll make it loud.
Oh,
is there any demand for?
We're gonna do a microphone for you because
Okay.
we're recording it.
Oh, there. Thank you. I'm just wondering if there's any demand for microloans in the rural art community? I got a short answer, yes.
And an endowment if you want to.
I can say from Assets for Arts perspective, we've the closest we've come to working in microloans is we've been a partner with Kiva.org, which has a microlending, crowdfunded microlending platform that a lot of people are familiar with, and it's got certain really exciting aspects to it, like it's interest free, but you also have to be able to crowdfund, which is something a lot of artists are able to do. And have a nice skill set for doing that. So that's a particularly interesting model for artists to consider if they're seeking loan capital. Most of the artists that we work with are really not particularly interested in any kind of debt, borrowed capital to finance their work, because they, often their likely income streams are so variable, so unpredictable, that it feels overly risky to take out capital, loan capital with all of that, even with 0% interest. So we find relatively few people who are choosing to go the microloan path, but there are some that, especially if it's a more maybe an object craft oriented thing that they can have some known income streams for, then we can point people towards some resources.
My answer is the same. Same with Kiva.
Awesome. And so it is time for us to wrap up our session today. I want to thank you all so much. I'm going to ask you one last question, real brief, before we go. But I want to remind all of you, there's these wonderful pink cards out back, or maybe they're all here now. Reimagining Rural. So what did this spark for you? Is there anything, programs, ideas, values that you're going to take away from this today and reimagine in your community? So that's what these cards are for today. We really want to hear what change can be made back home. So that's the question I'm going to ask you guys, is in a very brief sentence, what was sparked for you today?
I think I already said that the sort of the multi-state sort of rural fellowship connection between artists across communities is something that I think we could do more of, and I love the model that Springboard has for doing that, and actually putting significant money towards the community exchange and the visits between communities that artists make. That feels to me really genius and special. So that's a spark for me to take home.
Kyle, would you like to share?
So what was sparked today? For me, it's just a matter of how important our rural communities are. Listening to the other presenters, it helped me understand a little bit more of how important our work is, and making sure that we don't necessarily sit there and say, woe is me, we're in a small town, but understand that, hey, we've got a big task, and we've got to all work together, and that's the awesome thing, is that we do live in rural communities, and we're very connected, and so we can succeed.
Great takeaway. Yes.
I would say just, hearing these wonderful people speak about their work, I feel really jazzed to keep doing it. Like, I feel a lot of joy in this work, and I see the joy of you all, and the heart. I mean, it's not all joyful. Sometimes it's terrible, but I feel excited, and I feel like I know that the work we're doing is essential.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway too. So from here, everyone, I believe there's one more session to go to, and then starting at 5:15, there will be shuttles going out to Stonewall Farm, so you can join the Connect event and party. And tomorrow, there's so much joy happening in the beginning of the day. Another keynote, and then come back here because Catherine will be presenting an amazing workshop, really digging into how we can use theater and improvised practice and embodied practice to address some of the challenges, questions, problems that we've got back home. So looking forward to that tomorrow, and thank you all for coming today. I'm gonna leave my computer open for a couple of minutes if anyone wants to say hi to Kyle before you go. Because Kyle, I think you're wonderful, and I'm so sorry you can't be here in person with us, but want to make you feel as included as possible. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.